All right, welcome to this explainer on what I like to call the wild child of English grammar, the adverb. Whether you're a future English teacher prepping for your competitive exams or a linguistics student deep in the weeds of syntax, we're diving into a true masterclass today. We're looking specifically at Thema 43, one of the most notoriously versatile and, let's be real, structurally frustrating word classes out there. Let's break down its characteristics, its functions, and its classifications together, making sure we walk away with absolute clarity on this fascinating topic.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Here is our didactic syllabus for today, which will act as our roadmap through the complex rules ahead. Section 1 is all about the dustbin class. Section 2 covers morphology and formation. Section 3 dives into quirks, syntactic functions. Section 4 explores semantic roles. And finally, Section 5 looks at comparison and phraseology. Kicking things off with Section 1, defining the dustbin class. So, to really grasp the adverb, you've got to appreciate the massive headache it's given grammarians over the years. I mean, think about open classes like nouns or verbs. They have a very clear, solid semantic and morphological core, right? You usually know a noun the second you see one. But the adverb? It famously lacks that internal coherence. Words that we've traditionally lumped into this category often have literally almost nothing structurally in common with one another. It's a huge categorization puzzle for linguists. And this brings us to a really famous observation by the brilliant linguist David Crystal in the Cambridge Encyclopedia of Language. He straight up called the adverb a dustbin class into which grammarians place words whose grammatical status is unclear. It's funny, but it's absolutely true. Historically, if a word didn't fit neatly into a tidy box like noun, verb, or adjective, bam, traditional grammarians simply tossed it into the adverb dustbin. I mean, just look at how wild and structurally all over the place this category actually is. You've got time words like tomorrow, degree modifiers like very, connectors like however, manner adverbs like quickly, and even negation like not. They share pretty much zero structural DNA. Get this, even the definite article the acts as an adverb in specific comparative setups like when we say the more the merrier. It truly is the ultimate linguistic catch-all. Moving right along to Section 2, Morphology and Formation. Okay, so let's break down how these tricky words are actually built from a structural standpoint. And this brilliantly illustrates the divide between closed and open classes of adverbs. On one hand, we have the closed classes. These are your simple adverbs, just single, standalone morphemes, like just or soon, and compound adverbs, where morphemes combine into units like somehow or therefore. But on the other hand, you've got this massive, constantly expanding open class of derivational adverbs, and these are mostly built using suffixes, specifically that famous ly ending we all know and love. Now, pinning down the spelling rules for that ly derivational morpheme is absolutely crucial, and honestly, the system is kind of fascinating. If your base adjective ends in a consonant plus le, you just drop the e, so simple becomes simply. Naturally, English being English, there are exceptions, like whole keeping its e and becoming wholly. For bases ending in a consonant plus y, you swap the y for an I, making happy into happily. And for adjectives ending in IC, you usually tack on ALL, turning economic into economically. Though watch out for publicly, it notoriously drops that AL. But hey, while ly is definitely the heavyweight champion here, it's not the only suffix in the ring. We also use wise, as in clockwise, ward or wards for northwards, ways in sideways, and even style, like in American style. Oh, and a quick side note on phonology. In American English, adding these derivational suffixes often triggers a stress shift, so the adjective primary morphs into the adverb primarily.
Next up, Section 3, Quirks, Syntactic Functions.
All right, let's shift gears from how adverbs are built to what they actually do inside a clause. The renowned linguist Randolph Quirk breaks adverbials down into 4 functional categories based on how integrated they are. First up, adjuncts. These guys are highly integrated right into the core sentence structure. They feed us essential circumstantial info like time, place, or manner. Take a look at the sentence, slowly he walked back home. That adjunct, slowly, is a core fundamental piece of the clause's meaning.
Then we have subjuncts. Now, like adjuncts, these are also integrated into the sentence, but they play a much more subordinate role. Instead of giving us core circumstantial facts, they usually modify the force or the specific focus of an element. So in the sentence, would you kindly wait? The word kindly is acting as a subjunct. It's softly, subtly modifying the force of that request.
Okay, now we're moving out to the less integrated, more peripheral elements, starting with disjuncts.
Disjuncts kind of sit outside the core clause. Their job is basically to express the speaker's own evaluation, authority, or attitude about what they're saying. When someone says, frankly, I'm tired, that word frankly isn't describing how they are tired. It's the speaker bluntly evaluating their own statement. Make sense? Finally, to round out Quirk's four-part model, we have conjuncts. These are also peripheral, hanging out on the edges, but they have a strictly connective job. They act as a bridge, linking what's currently being said back to the previous context. So if you say, so she must be rich, that conjunct so is explicitly linking your conclusion to whatever evidence you just laid out. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that adverbs aren't just broad clause elements. They get down into the weeds and act as specific modifiers for other constituents too. They love to pre-modify adjectives, like very happy, or even other adverbs, like too fast. They can even modify entire noun or prepositional phrases, like saying quite a party. But you have to pay special attention to the word enough. It's a real outlier because it almost exclusively post-modifies its head. That's how we end up with phrases like stupid enough.
Moving on to Section 4, Semantic Roles. So, we know how they function syntactically, but what about the actual tangible meaning these adverbs inject into our sentences? Let's look at space adverbials. These convey absolute, fundamental physical info, and they do it by drawing a hard line between stasis and motion. For position, or stasis, we might say something like, he lay on his bed. But for direction, indicating actual motion across space, we'd say, they drove southwards. It literally maps the action onto the physical world.
Quirk also outlines several other vital semantic roles that you definitely want to memorize. First, modality. This modifies the sheer force of a sentence, like when you emphasize something with certainly. Then there's degree, which assesses elements on a sliding scale, like amplifying an action by saying someone wants something badly. Contingency deals with those tricky cause and effect relationships, using words like because or though. And lastly, respect. This identifies a specific point of reference. For example, if you clarify that someone is advising you legally, each of these roles fundamentally shifts the nuance of what you're saying.
And finally, we've arrived at Section 5, Comparison and Phraseology.
This right here is a really foundational distinction, but it's absolutely vital to keep straight as we explore how adverbs and adjectives interact. Adjectives have one specific, very dedicated job. They modify nouns. Adverbs, on the other hand, they're the ultimate multitaskers. They modify verbs, they modify adjectives, and yes, they even modify other adverbs. Their scope of influence within a sentence is just massively wider.
Now, just like adjectives, adverbs also have comparative and superlative forms. For regular comparisons, if an adverb looks identical to its adjective counterpart, it just takes standard inflection. You know, fast, faster, fastest. Simple enough. But when we're dealing with adverbs ending in ly that were derived from adjectives, we have to use what's called a periphrastic form. That's just a fancy way of saying we use extra words instead of a suffix. We don't say quicklier, right? We say quickly, more quickly, most quickly. So, the crucial point here is that while those regular rules are great, the irregular comparisons, you just have to sit down and memorize them. Badly becomes worse and worse. Well becomes better and best. Actually, there's a really interesting linguistic quirk here regarding the transatlantic divide. When using verbs like need or want, British speakers tend to say more badly, as in, I need this job more badly. But American English leans hard into that irregular comparative, saying, I need this job worse. Kind of neat, right? Before we wrap up, we have to recognize that this whole adverbial function thing isn't just limited to single words. Entire groups of words can step up and do the exact same job. Adverbial phrases are clusters of words that don't have a subject-verb dynamic. Think of prepositional phrases like in the morning. Adverbial clauses, however, are fully formed subordinate clauses that do pack a subject and a verb, like because it was raining. But functionally, both of these structures provide the exact same highly nuanced detail as a single standalone adverb. And just like that, we've reached the end of our explainer on Tema 43. We've seen exactly how this category, one that grammarians literally used to dismiss as a messy dustbin class, actually operates with some incredible morphological variety and really complex syntactic functions. From those deeply integrated adjuncts all the way out to peripheral conjuncts, they profoundly shape our meaning. So I'm going to leave you with this one thought to ponder. If adverbs are merely a dustbin class, how do they end up providing the most crucial nuances in the English language? Keep that in mind the next time you're diagramming a sentence. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer.